So wake me up when it's all over, when I'm wiser and I'm bolder. Francois is here tonight. It's great to see you. How are you tonight, Francois?
Well, just hearing you singing, my dear, I'm just happy as you are.
Yay! Well, it's so great to be with you again tonight. And so I'm just going to get us going live over on Facebook. I had the song Wake Me Up When It's All Over come into my head.
Oh.
And now we're glitching because it's the glitch in the matrix. That's how I see it. That's how I see it. So,
Okay.
but you ready to go live?
Yes, let's go.
Okay. We are going live on Facebook for the first time. Not true at all. We do this every week at 8 p.m. or when we're finally able to go live. And so I hope you enjoy the show. We got Laura J. and Francois Lepchek here today. How are you, my friend?
Oh, allow me not to sing. I will just answer, I'm very fine. And I would say, praise to the Lord, or praise the life that we are sharing, where there's so many things happening and we can just stick to what's inside our heart. So we are sure we are going forward. Yeah.
Love it. Yes, thank you. It's wonderful to co-host this experience with you on Thursday nights at 8 o'clock. Knowing I'm not alone really makes a difference in terms of coming here to share with you who may not yet have been introduced to the 4 pillars of the teachings of the Ascended Masters. Michael Seegers and I started the Michael and Laura show last year because we wanted to make the teachings more accessible. And I had a lot of questions. And so I just wanted to get my questions answered by a man who's been in the teachings for 40 years and knows a tremendous amount, even including he founded the Shambhala Temple of Light. And so I asked Michael the questions directly. And then through Michael, I got the pleasure of meeting Francois and many others who have a lot of experience with teachings that the world have not been well versed in previously, because it's sacred knowledge, because it's empowering. So Francois, if you might want to actually speak into the teachings and what drew you to the teachings, I think that would be a great way to introduce people to the teachings of the Ascended Masters. And, you know, there are also a lot of people that have a lot of fears around counter or alternative beliefs. And so if you might want to speak into that as somebody that is very devout and faithful and, you know, really has your own practice, that would be very helpful to people at this particular time in humanity's history, I believe.
Well, one's experience can certainly serve others, but I think it's good to just offer it very humbly. It's personal experience. So whatever, if it says something to others, that's fine. I know that I was looking for something more than just religious. I was before in the Catholic religion. I was raised in that, but I was looking for something more, something that has not been said. And I just felt there was something more that I couldn't find in a Catholic. So I have my faith and I still have my faith. But what I was looking for, and one thing brought me to meditation and to Buddhism. And I said, oh, Buddhism, interesting. In religion Catholic, they were saying that only Jesus the Christ was the Son of God, and Buddha does not exist. And when I met the Buddhism and I went to one group, another, so they were saying the same thing about Jesus. And I was just like, oh, oh, one denying the other in each group. It was, so I just love the Buddha, but I couldn't just put Jesus away because in my heart, I felt I was, I have a real connection in my heart with Jesus. And when I enter into this path of the teaching of the Ascended Masters through the Summit Line House, I just discovered that they were doing exactly the same thing. And they were talking about the same thing, but one was talking to the people in Europe and the other one was talking to the people in the other culture, but they were just doing the same and they were just friends. So it was just on earth that I just said, well, I can believe in both and ask both to guide me. And that was the perfect, I would say the perfect team. So I could believe in Jesus, I could pray Jesus, I could believe in Buddha and ask and follow the Eightfold Path of the Buddha. And finally, by studying what Jesus have taught, Jesus taught exactly the same thing as Buddha had taught in his Eightfold Path. So I just find that that was my home. Both could be, and then the more I was entering in, and at the beginning, you know, I was not speaking very well English. I still have to find my way in saying things in English, but anyway, I'm much better than I was at the beginning.
You're great.
And for me, suddenly I just say, but this teaching is just like a treasure chest. A treasure chest. There was so many things to just discover and feel good about it. And so that I found that everything that I was looking for was just there. It's not, we have some practice that looks like religious, but we have some practice that is more of mysticism. And there's another aspect of this teaching is that we have to make it practical, to make it work.
That's how we get victory. Yeah. True.
So I think it's a very small resume, but that's what I found in this teaching, a treasure chest, and two I would say two brother that I love very much. And suddenly I learned that they were not enemies at all, but they were just friends of the light.
Yes.
And so many others like Saint Germain and El Moria and Kuan Yin and the 5D Yani Buddhas. And it's a whole it's a whole million beings gathered together to help us make it in this path. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the path is not easy, and we lose a tremendous number of souls prematurely because the path becomes too difficult for them to feel they can bear the cross on their own. And that's part of the reason that we're actually going through these teachings, because you're soon going to be introduced to the Maltese cross, which is significant because you're the center point. From my understanding of the CIA Gateway Process report, we're the center point in that report, and we're also the center point of the Maltese cross. And when we actually learn that, Michael Seegers actually shared with me at the early stages of me being introduced to the teachings. He actually said that each of the religions was based on a ray. And so I don't know enough about each of the colors of the ray, and that's definitely a teaching that's further down the line to where I've been, because with a hearing tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. that I am not defending myself. I'm simply standing in honor with all rights reserved as a woman in my private capacity, saying the day that I am being accused of having committed a crime, I see no victim. And if Her Majesty is the one that is named on the notice or on the summons, and she's not responded and she's not present and won't even acknowledge who she is, then why am I the woman here? Because it is an eye for an eye. It is an EYE to an I for the letter. And we must understand that on common land and on common law, we are actually needing to see the other eye to eye, which is why a corporation is a corpse that has no soul, that needs our soul, which means that it is our hand used for the pen, for the signature on whatever is signed on behalf of the corpse, that then reflects the liability on the hand that signed it for the corpse, which means that anyone who is actually trespassing against me, the woman that committed no crime the day that I spoke and shared my belief systems, on that day, I committed no crime, and tomorrow I will stand and say that I have claimed the right to not even attend this whole trespass against me in now 10 notices, which a letter is different from a notice, and we need to be very mindful of that. Full of our mind, but then actually understanding what it means in our heart so we can feel through the discomfort that comes up when we do challenge an old tradition or belief system, which is what I'm doing tomorrow. And I bring it up because that is very much what's in my field at this moment. And I am going to stand like the woman that is not on a cross to be persecuted, but it is to stand as the transmitter of light out into this universe of one song, to be one who contributes to the harmonizing of humanity with an extra E for all hues included, including how we direct our energy intentionally, which is what is required. So, with all of that being shared at the start of what is now 20 minutes into our normally an hour lecture or book study experience, Francoise reads the chapter summary for the 4pillars.higherconsciousness.ca website that has the whole book and 3 others in the 4 pillars of the teachings of the Ascended Masters. This is what we'll be reading tonight, though it looks different in terms of the cover, since now they have combined pillars 2 and 3, which we'll be then reading chapter 1 of this. And afterwards, we'll get into intermediate studies of the human aura, which is also combined with studies of the human aura, pillar 1, 2. So, pillar 2, Francoise, it's you.
Yes, pillar 2, chapter 9.
Woohoo!
Okay. The
Crucible of
crucible of being. Yeah. This chapter is in 3 parts. In the first part, Saint Germain covers the transmutation of consciousness, the expansion of the universal consciousness within the individual. In the second part, he presents vision for the golden age. That's very interesting. And the role of the alchemists can play in bringing about the golden age. And the third part, he is talking about taking personal responsibility for our action and our victory in the light. And maybe there is something special for you for tomorrow in this.
oh,
And don't forget that seventh ray is the violet ray, and it's the ray of justice too.
woo!
With Portia Portia, the um, twin flame of Saint Germain, is the goddess of justice.
Of course.
Okay.
Portia's the goddess of justice. Is she the one that's blindfolded?
No, this is a representation of justice, but the goddess of justice is Portia, the twin flame of Saint Germain.
Wow. Well,
But the statue, and you represent the justice, is that she is blind. She's just waiting the things and then decide for the truth. Yeah.
well, I feel like we could go into a deep conversation about karma that we might need to hold off on at this particular moment. But definitely, karma is a huge conversation because part of the reason that I shared that piece about the liability of the hand that uses the pen for the corpse is the fact that I lost my train of thought and there's a lot of technological issues. So there's a lot of glitching in the matrix that's happening that we're just going to acknowledge. And that train of thought did get interrupted, but if it is meant to come forward, then it will. We're going to read chapter 9, The Crucible of Being. Breathe there the man, with soul so dead, who never to himself hath said, "This is my own, my native universe." Part 1. If I could cite one area of application which the students need to work on more than any other, it is that of the expansion of the universal consciousness within the force field of the individual. The greatest need of mankind today, and I say this unequivocally, is the development of the nurturing of the sense of the universal as belonging completely to the individual. From thence is drawn the foregone conclusion that the individual must also be sensed as belonging to that universal cosmos so conceived. As the student of alchemy approaches the temple of being, of life, of oneness, he must, if he would correctly apprehend the meaning of existence and derived happiness therefrom, see himself as a diamond of light's perfection set in a mounting of perpetual elegance. Acknowledging his origin in those permanent realities which the interpretive mind and heart of being are able to apprehend and hold in the proper focus of prospective progress, man shall once again renew his intelligently guided drift towards sublime reality. There is no greater deterrent to progress than the isolationism that evolves out of the sense of separation from life, wherein the smallness of the ego, pitted against the indeterminate odds, lurks in the shadow of uncertainty. The unforeseeable events of the future, by reason of their opacity, project little comfort into the longing heart which awaits some word from the creative mind of God, some foreknowledge of the depth of that love which God feels from each part of the vast whole of the cosmos in all of its immensity and greatness. From the least to the greatest minds of earth, all need the benefit of lasting attunement with the universal consciousness of God. Mankind, through various religious concepts, have imagined God to be a creature creator, simply because they themselves are creator creatures. Using the tremendous outgoing energy of being, men have diligently imagined and imaged forth the nature of God, while only the few have apprehended the truth that God is consciousness, and as consciousness, he is life, intelligence, will, and love manifest in a rich variety of dimensions and attributes. Now, I tell you, God is a benign impersonal personality, a personal impersonality, a personal personality, and an impersonal impersonality, comprising the manifold consciousness of being. He gives and gives of his creative self to the creatures he has made in the hope that they will apprehend his purposes and emulate his consciousness to the fullness with which he has endowed them. As they mature and grow throughout life, people imitate one another, consciously and unconsciously, mimicking the personalities that touch their lives. They dwell in such a sense of unreality that they persist in identifying themselves as vile sinners. They accept not only the accusations of the accuser of our brethren, whose machinations are exposed in the 12th chapter of the book of Revelation, but also the burden of mounting waves of mass condemnation, which, like a raging sea, threaten to drown the real image of the higher self in an ocean of emotion. The purpose of thought and feeling is to form the mold of fruitful and progressive experience, which in turn endows mankind with the highest aspects of his divine self. You see, blessed alchemists, your thoughts and feelings are the culmination lines that adjust and align your energies, focusing them through the lens of consciousness according to your free will for either constructive or destructive designs in the world of form. Mankind, in the mainstream of their influence, have misused the energies of their thoughts and feelings, and unaware of the consequences of their mental and emotional inconsistencies, irregularities, and incongruencies, they have molded light's energies descending into their world into asymmetrical forms which, by reason of their nature, could never produce happiness for themselves or any other part of life. The idea of a temperamental, vengeful, or unjust God is abhorrent from the outset. The concept of an arbitrary deity who would show favoritism is likewise distressing. Hence, according to his awareness of the deity, man himself becomes the arbiter of his destiny, and according to his uses of energy, the harbinger of truth or error in his life. The stratification of human consciousness from the aboriginal types onto the erudite 20th century man, skilled in philosophy, science, religion, and the higher mechanisms of living, persists in its full range to the present day in various parts of the world. Honest individuals will even recognize in themselves these progressive steps of consciousness, which, if progress is being made, are constantly in a state of flux. Now, it is true that it may be more comfortable, at least temporarily, for mankind to vegetate neath the sun and the moon in an isolated reverie, remote from the challenges of life, without benefit of the sometimes violent but always disturbing alchemical heat, which, as Christic fires, acts to purge mankind of his dross. But I am certain that the soul which desires to climb the hill of attainment to reach the summit peaks will neither find fault with nor reject the necessary chain of experiences that are intended to broaden the mind, sharpen the intellect, exalt the spirit, and test the mettle of a man. While on the subject of the gradations of consciousness, remember that each level represents a phase of the alchemy of transition from the human to the divine, a just sense of the equal opportunity of all to apprentice themselves to the master alchemist is a prerequisite to personal freedom. To recognize the potential of a mobile and malleable consciousness is to recognize the soaring of the spirit. To be willing to accept personal responsibility for changing unwanted conditions within the domain of the self is to accept the responsibility of being a son of God. Those who cater to their egos and allow the energy patterns, example, vibrations of personal jealousy, to block the doorway to self mastery as they court the attainment of another life stream will be hindered in their progress on the path until they have transmuted this propensity. Jealousy is in fact rooted in the doubt and the fear that Almighty God Himself is unable to bestow upon each one every good and necessary talent contributing to the fulfillment of His divine plan. Inasmuch as jealousy and competition between individual expressions of God are among the basic causes of all unhappiness upon earth, I would definitely underscore the student's need to put them to the flame. The threats to the alchemist's self-mastery posed by jealousy manifest in many subtle modes, so much so that many honest-hearted people are unaware of the fact that such tainted vibrations do from time to time play upon their feelings. Application made in prayer and supplication, or as invocations and affirmations called decrees, made in the name of God for the freeing of oneself from all conditions of struggle and strife, will bear the fruit of an active yet peaceful progress. You see, false identification with family and friends, the acceptance of limitations through heredity and environment, attachment to persons and places, to one's race, religion, nationality, or ethnic group, must also be submitted to the flames of the refiner's fire for transmutation. Personal attitudes must be adjusted to impersonal laws, and thought and feeling patterns must be molded after more noble designs if the individual is to make true spiritual progress. I do not say that individuals should not be loyal to those whom they love and in whom they believe, but I do declare that man's first loyalty should be to his true self, his own God identity, and to his Christed being, and then to those of like mind. Above all, the purposes and uses of life must be rightly understood and practiced. To awaken each day to another round of pursuing vain pleasures and the questionable hope of mortal expectation, herein lies a state of flaccid misery in which the soul is scarcely exercised. When the purposes of heaven are truly understood, man will welcome the dawn and receive each new day with joy. In the fullness of life, man can hardly fear death. As I wrote in my essay of death under the name of Francis Bacon, it is as natural to die as to be born, and to a little infant, perhaps, the one is as painful as the other. Thus, we now stand at a point in our alchemical studies where we must understand the meaning of the mortification of the body of untransmuted substance. Through the centuries, men have taken great pride in the body. They have glorified it and deified it. Artists have painted it, sculptors have created beautiful statues exhibiting it, and in the end it has fallen into dust and decay. All the while this process of decay has been going on, the spirit of man has supposedly been creating houses of perfection eternal in the heavens. And this is true in part, for every good deed which man does while in the body is recorded to his credit in the great concentric rings of light and electronic substance which comprise his causal body, the body of first cause, which is the dwelling place of the presence of the Most High God. As each individual man who is a manifestation of God has a causal body, so each individual has an I am presence, pulsating as the sacred fire in the center of that body. And in the auric force field surrounding that presence are the markings of his achievements for good upon his planetary home. One law, then, would I instill in the hearts of the students of alchemy. God is absolutely just. The universe is absolutely just. All injustice arises either in man's misinterpretation and misunderstanding of the flow of events or in man's mishandling of justice. Those who have not apprehended life correctly, those who remain ignorant of the laws of divine as well as human justice, cannot be relied upon to preserve the flame of justice. As I have stated before, every student must be willing to throw off the shackles of the false teachers and their false teachings. Every student must determine to break the chains of error, even while he rejects the image of the world as a place where integrity is lacking in the suggestion that individuals are here to take advantage of one another. The well-known and often quoted entrepreneur P.T. Barnum said, "There's a sucker born every minute." Of course, people do not like to think that they are being taken advantage of. Therefore, they often try to outdo the other fellow before he outdoes them. This attitude is responsible for a most unhealthy climate in both commerce and society. While it is true that the responsibility rests with the world's leaders in every field to set an example of integrity, nothing should prevent the world's followers from manifesting that integrity which their leaders ought to manifest, or from exalting virtue as an example before them. There is much in the world's thought about itself that is accurate, but its inaccuracies have come to be accepted by individuals without question. Such tacit acceptance makes for both a weak civilization and a weak individuality. Therefore, in strengthening the bonds of freedom throughout the world, a new man must emerge from the social milieu. A new Atlantean must step forth clothed with the righteousness of the sun, a golden man for the golden age. This is the master alchemist. If this spiritual man, clothed with the power of the sun, clothed with the power of spiritual alchemy, clothed with the virtue that he already possesses, but of which he is far too often unaware, is to stand forth today, it must be because he has offered the body of his corrupt substances to be thrown into the crucible of the alchemical furnace. The early Christian mystics and writers referred to this experience when they said that a man ought to die with Christ if he expected to live with him. This death of the old man with his deeds is confined to the crucible of the spiritual alchemical experience. Thus, it is possible for all unwanted conditions in a man's life to be changed, that he may pass through a glorious transmutative epoch culminating in the putting on of the new man. Free at last of the dross of the human experience, man stands forth in all of the shining glory of the divine experience that is the wholeness of the resurrection. The agonies of Germain may be compared to the spiritual preparation that the individual alchemist must make before knowingly and consciously committing himself to the crucible of life in order that he may emerge in the true glory of his being. This is dying with Christ in the certain hope that he will live again. Beloved ones, bear in mind that those who do not do so willingly and knowingly will still pass through the change called death, even if they persist in following the ways that lead to destruction. But this change, without the prior putting off of the old man, will not lead to the indestructible Christhood that God intends every son to manifest. It is a supreme demonstration of faith when a living soul, forsaking even self-love, offers himself as a living sacrifice in order that Christ's victory be glorified through him. Such is a career Son of God. In closing part 1, I advocate that the seeker make any sacrifice necessary to the seeking out of the golden possibilities that gleam through the mists of time and space as spiritual reality, the hope of every man upon earth. Part 2. Beloved ones, just as heaven is not lost by a single thought or deed of a life stream, so heaven is not gained by a single thought or deed. Nevertheless, your life can become a daily round of victories, whereby each step taken aright propels you into an expanding awareness of the beauty and glory of the newness of life. This is the resurrection from dead works of carnality into the living exaltation of the Christ consciousness of spirituality, vesting each one so dedicated with the mission of Jesus the Christ, one of the greatest alchemists of all time. Speaking of resurrection, I am reminded of the words, in the beauty of the lilies, Christ was born across the sea, with a glory in his bosom that transfigures you and me. As he died to make men holy, let us live to make men free, while God is marching on. The newly resurrected man in whom Christ is born, in whom there is a transfiguring glory, is resurrected by the power of change, by the science of divine alchemy. In him, the dawn of each new day takes on a spiritual significance never before experienced. He holds each day as a chalice of opportunity to live free and to make all men free. Then all of nature, in sweet communion with the yearning of his life stream to fan the fires of freedom, extends immortal hands of felicity. The trees, the flowers, the rocks, the earth, all of the variegated expressions of nature bow to that man who has made himself the instrument of freedom and extend to him the care and consideration of the master gardener himself. The Father who created the paradise of God referred to in Genesis is now perceived to be, in fact, the creator of all loveliness. The sylphs of the air, the undies of the sea, the fury salamanders of the flame, and the gnomes of the earth are recognized as elemental spirits created to assist that one Father in bringing forth a kingdom of supreme loveliness and beauty. It is recognized by the perceptive alchemist that the carnal nature of man has been outpictured in part by the nature kingdom, for the elementals, from the smallest to the greatest, are great mimics of the human scene, as they have taken on human concepts of duality. Thorns and thistles, pain and parting have been brought forth upon the screen of life. Yet, with all of the despoiling of the virgin beauty of the earth by mankind's discord and inharmony, much that is lovely has remained, showing that the power of God is greater than the power of the deification of evil. Through friendship with the servants of God and man and nature, the compassionate alchemist learns to utilize the great spiritual flow of elemental life and finds in the presence of the Holy Spirit a cooperation with nature which formerly he did not even dream existed. looking upon the blessed earth with the grandeur of its rolling plains, its fertile valleys, and its mountain ranges, gazing upon the crystalline mirrors of its lakes and flowing streams interlacing the terrain and conveying the water element in channels of varying depth, mankind become filled with reverent wonder. The planetary veins and arteries conveying the tireless energy of the Eternal One from place to place upon the spinning globe of the world, the blue dome of the sky with the golden sun disk to warm and revivify mankind, the silent night with the crystal moon and diadems of stars like unto the Pleiades. All of these are flooded with a sense of unity which pervades all things. Nowhere is unity felt with greater meaning than in the depths of the heart of the individual who is in complete attunement with God and his own I am presence, the individualized identity of the perfection of the Creator himself. That body of historical error, composed of myriad carnal events and human misqualifications, is changed now by the alchemical fires of spiritual regeneration, and in its place, the wholeness of the real being of man stands forth. He is no longer a part, he is the all of creation. These valleys and hills, these diadems of stars and far reaches of space are a part of himself. He is all of them and in them all. With this supernal sense of ever present wonder, man is able, as an integral manifestation of God, to perform the miracles of the great alchemist and make his world the wondrous glory of the resurrection. Old senses are passed away, all things are become new. With that, I wish to give the students a coup d'oeil into advancements which shall be forthcoming in the world of science. I am interested in offering a preview of man's greater control of the elements in the studies in alchemy, because some of our would-be alchemists can be instrumental in the production of these new techniques or in calling them forth from the universal. Let us consider for a moment the development of the mind switch. At present, lights, elevators, doors, and many devices are activated by switches or electronically, and engineers are at work upon a typewriter which will type phonetically sentences spoken directly into it. The mind switch is even more revolutionary, for it will enable men to direct mechanical apparatus and electrical functions through brainwaves by the mastery of the energy currents flowing through the mind. Of course, many amusing situations could be construed in which two individuals might transmit divergent impulses simultaneously. This should pose no problem, for they would but cancel each other out, or the stronger would overcome the weaker of the transmitted thought waves. Another development of the coming age will be a camera so sensitized that it will make possible the photographing of the human aura. This will enable physicians to discover the fundamental causes of many physical diseases, as well as the solution to psychiatric problems related to the emotions and subconscious records of past experiences, even in previous lives unknown to the patients themselves. The wave patterns caused by criminal tendencies and crimes recorded in the etheric body will also be photographed and recorded by sensitive instruments in graphic form, similar to the process now used to record brainwaves and impulses of the nervous system. Evidence of guilt or innocence will thereby be afforded those administrators of justice who formerly relied on incomplete knowledge of events in the penalizing of delinquent individuals. With the advent of greater understanding of magnetism, it will be possible to so amplify the power of magnetism as to suspend furniture in midair without any form of visible support. A new optical development is forthcoming which will increase mankind's exploration of the microscopic and atomic worlds. So, this field, the magnification of images with great clarity, will become possible by methods not previously encountered. With this advancement, certain methods of transmutation will be made known to the chemists of the world, whereby the synthesis of new elements will be achieved as simply as a child plays with blocks. A new form of aeronavigation and transportation will be made possible by utilizing an electronic ray played upon the metal of which the airship itself is composed, negating the gravitational influences upon it and giving it a quality of lightness similar to helium. This will enable it to rise in complete resistance to the power of gravity. The ship can then be directed by atomic jet in such a manner that a safe form of locomotion will be made available to all. A breakthrough in color television enabling increased clarity in the ranges of color tones and values should come forth before too long. Through the means of orbiting satellites, such as those that are currently circling the Earth, a new method of studying the weather and of mapping it will cause mankind to realize the need for a central control station for the weather in order to direct its conditions over most of the landed areas of the world. I feel, however, that this could be the subject of such controversy that and may eventually be dropped until the time when greater unity and amicability exists between various interest groups and among the family of nations. The work begun many years ago by Luther Burbank, who acted under the direction of the hierarchy in his experiments with nature and the grafting of plants, will be brought to a new degree of perfection as certain influences within the hearts of the seeds themselves are revealed through advanced studies in cytology. Within the heart of the desert cactus is locked a secret whereby the arid areas of the world can indeed be made to blossom as the rose and produce all manner of fruits and vegetables with far less moisture than is presently required. Water shortages may thus be alleviated. The present surge in world population, which seems to have caused many demographers to review and revise the doctrines of Malthus with the aim of extinguishing or limiting human life in complete contradiction to God's laws, will prove of less concern to future societies as they become aware of marvelous methods of increasing agricultural production, of harvesting the wealth of the sea, and of the unlimited use of atomic energy in advanced city planning as well as in interplanetary colonization. There is a purpose in the plans of God which far transcends the understanding of the human intellect and the memory of history upon earth. The wonders that are to come will soon be dwarfed by still greater wonders, and therefore all life should live in a state of constant expectancy. It is the joy of the mind of God to give richly of his blessing. But above all, may I counsel you now, students of the light, and all mankind. Obtain first from God the Father the wisdom to live peaceably, to deal gently and courteously with one another, to promote the education of mankind the world around, and especially by honest efforts to prevent the increase in number of those indignant individuals who are prone to commit crimes against society. The value of training the young in a proper manner and encouraging them to live lives of useful service and good character cannot be overestimated. Political scandals within the nations of the world and the harshness of police state methods, as enforced in communist dominated countries, must be overridden by the sword of the Prince of Peace. The Prince of Peace is imagined in the compassionate Christ going forth to teach all nations that the way of God is good, that his wonders are intended to be used and possessed by all and exclusively by none. A higher way of life than vain competition must be pursued. Men must become God spurred and less motivated by status seeking. Teach this truth. The sharing of the grace of heaven is a message of eternal watchfulness from the great white brotherhood to all upon earth. Abundance and peace go hand in hand, and this state of felicity is the will of God. Let this planet, by the power of spiritual and natural alchemy, arise to build new homes, new churches, new schools, A new civilization, new concepts, new virtue, new greatness, all in the bonds of eternal confidence which blazes forth from the very heart of God and is anchored within your own physical heart as the expanding flame spark of the immortal alchemist himself. Part 3. The feeling of aloneness should be transmuted and superseded by the certainty of all oneness. Man came forth from God as good, and he shall return to that goodness by becoming like it through the dignity of freedom and choice. The power, love, and wisdom of God are never tyrannical, but gently bestow upon each individual creature of the creation the blessedness of opportunity to know God without limit. Forgiveness, mercy, justice, peace, achievement, and progress toward ultimate supremacy are the gifts which life holds for all. Through the process of descent into matter and form, man, as a part of God destined to become ultimately victorious, is made the conscious master of all he surveys, so long as he is not forgetful of his source. By identifying with the gross, man becomes almost at once entangled in a web of human creation whose snarls, like the thread of Ariadne, weaving through the labyrinthian cave of subterranean matter, bring him face to face with the Minotaur, who dwells in the lower octaves of consciousness, waiting to devour the Christ. Escape is freedom. That which descends and is committed to form and density must, in obtaining its freedom, ascend back to that source from whence it came. To do this prematurely is an error, and therefore the Father, or I Am Presence, knows of each life stream, the day and hour when he is truly ready, until the fullness of outer circumstance is transcended and transmuted in a manner whereby the life stream has fulfilled his original purposes of entering the orbit of Earth. He should continue his training and preparation in accordance with the universal plan. Surely thoughtful individuals will quickly recognize that marrying and the giving in marriage, procreation, and the perpetuation of present modes of civilization are not of themselves the ultimate purposes of life. All the world as a stage is not the cosmic coliseum, and ere the curtain is drawn on the final act, the drama of man's existence shall be played out in many corners of the universe undreamed of by either early or modern man. Men's dreams of heaven are but fond glimpses into the imagery of Elysium, graciously afforded mankind as encouragement until the time when they are able to expand their own spiritual vision and behold reality in the wonders of the Father in his many cosmic mansions. The supreme purpose of God for every life stream upon earth is the selfsame victory which beloved Jesus manifested from the hill of Bethany, the accent of Christendom upon the agony of the Gethsemane, the crucifixion and the vigil in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, has often eclipsed the great significance for every man, woman, and child of the glories of the resurrection and mysteries of the ascension. Misunderstanding of the law of cause and effect and failure to apprehend the at-one-ment of the universal Christ originated in the human concepts that were introduced in the parable of Eden, and continue to the present day, perpetuated by the hoary mists of time and dogma. Unfortunately, the vicarious atonement has been ignorantly accepted and is widely used as an excuse for wrongdoings and their continuation. Thus, surrounded by an aura of godly but needless fear, men have persisted in passing on fallacies from generation to generation in the name of God and Holy Writ. The registering of discord and wrongdoing upon man's four lower bodies, example the physical, mental, memory, and emotional bodies, is effected by scientific law, cosmically ordained and itself the very instrument of creation. As creators, men have sown the wind and reaped a karmic whirlwind. The victory of the universal Christ, which beloved Jesus demonstrated, was intended to show to man the way that would conduct him safely back to God's image. That way was revealed as the Christ, or divine light within every man that cometh into the world. It is this wondrous light, then, which is the light and life of the world, of every man's individual world. Only by walking in the light as he, the universal Christ, is in the light, can men return to the Father's house. The forgiveness of sins is a merciful instrument of the great law, whereby retribution or the penalty for wrongdoing is held in abeyance, in order that a life stream may have the freedom to go and sin no more, and then be given the opportunity for greater spiritual progress. However, forgiveness does not absolve the soul of the requirement to balance the energies misused by the alchemical fires of transmutation. The balancing of wrongs done to every part of life, including the self, must be accomplished in full with cosmic precision. Hence, every jot and tittle of the law must be fulfilled, either here or hereafter. This process need not be a fearful looking for of judgment, but it should preferably be a happy expectation of opportunity for service to life and the freeing of life's imprisoned splendor. For by ministering unto life individually and universally, and by calling forth the alchemical fires on the altar of being, the individual can undo all of the inharmonies which he has thoughtlessly cast upon its beauteous presence. Truly, those who have been forgiven much can love much, for they perceive the need to be everlastingly grateful for the goodness and mercy of God which endure forever. One of the major causes of recalcitrance, arrogance, willful wrongdoing, disobedience, rebellion, and stubbornness is the vain hope of individual attainment without individual effort, or of personal salvation without personal sacrifice. Mankind do not relish the idea of painstakingly withdrawing every thread and snarl they have placed in the garment of life, or of attaining heaven by honest application. Yet they must one day face this truth of themselves. Therefore, the present, when truth and justice of opportunity are at hand, is the right and accepted time. Behold, now is the accepted time. Behold, now is the day of salvation. The desire to find a scapegoat for one's sins in a world teacher or savior is not in keeping with the cosmic principles undergirding the law of the atonement. A master of great light, such as Jesus the Christ or Gautama Buddha, may hold the balance for millions of souls who are not able to carry the weight of their own sinful sense. This holding action is a staying of the law, whereby, through mercy and through the personal sacrifice of one who keeps the flame for all, mankind might find their way back to God, and then, in the power of the rebirth and in the presence of the Holy Spirit, return to take up the unfinished business of balancing their debts to life. Christ is the Savior of the world because by his immaculate heart he postpones the day of judgment, affording humanity additional opportunity in time and space to fulfill the requirements of immortality. I cannot, in the holy name of freedom, resist speaking out on these matters. For many have suffered in the astral world after the change called death, and when they came before the lords of karma to give an accounting for their lives, they were found wanting. Unfortunately, this may have been only because while on earth they accepted false religious doctrine and in their misguided state failed to do well in the time allotted to them. Then came to pass the words God spake to Adam's son: Sin lieth at the door. That is to say, the record of the misuse of God's energy is at hand. Render an accounting. In God's scheme of world order, the propitiation for sin is permanent and effective. For the violet fire will transmute every unwanted condition and balance all by light. This light is the universal Christ. The precious violet flame, an aspect of the Comforter's consciousness, is the friend of every alchemist. It is both the cup and the elixir of life that cannot fail to produce perfection everywhere it is called into action. After the violet flame has performed its perfect work, then let all rest in their labors, that God may move upon the waters, waves of light of the creation, to produce and sustain the righteousness of his eternal law. The climax or initiation of the ascension can and will come to all, even to little children, when they are ready for it. When at least 51% of their karma has been balanced, this means that 51% of the energy ever given to their use has been transmuted and put to constructive purpose, and their hearts are just towards God and man, aspiring to rise into the never failing light of God's eternally ascending presence. When this gift is given to anyone by his own I Am presence and the karmic board, the appearance of age drops from him as swiftly as a smile can raise the lips, and the magnetism and energy of that one becomes the unlimited power of God surging through his being. The dross of the physical, the weariness of the emotional body, tired of hatred and its monstrous creations, the ceaseless rote of the mental body, all drop away and are replaced in perfect ease by their divine counterparts. The feelings become charged by the love of God and the angels. The mind is the diamond shining mind of God, omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent. The total being is inspired and aspiring. Thus, that which once hopefully descended now ascends back into the light from whence it came. One with the company of angels in the nature of friendship of the ascended masters, and in fellowship with the august fraternity of the great white brotherhood, each such one, by the divine merit within, attains the fullness of all that God would ever bestow upon each son, without respect of any man's person, but in joyful acknowledgment of man's victory. Thou art my beloved Son, this day I have begotten thee. Epilogue. Religion and spirituality are no shame. These are the implements of the eternally creative arts. These are the friends of the alchemists who would change every base element of human nature and all life into the gold of Christed accomplishment. In this teaching are keys to the highest portal. They must be fitted in the lock to gain entrance to the highest initiation. I am the door to the progressive unfoldment of ever ascending planes of consciousness. All within your lovely God presence I am. Blessed ones, you are not limited in alchemy merely to the drawing forth from the universal light of three-dimensional objects. Alchemy can be mastered in order to illumine the mind, to heal any unwanted condition, and to spiritually exalt man's total nature from its base state to the golden standard, where the golden rule is law. With you, as with God, all things are possible. There is no other higher way. For example, the brilliance of present Soviet science cannot win the universe for the blessed children of Mother Russia. Only God can bring eternal satisfaction to the whole earth. Let the ungodly tremble, for they shall be cut down as grass, but the righteous shall shine as the sons of the great alchemist, Almighty God. Further studies in alchemy are available to all who would progressively advance in this science of self-dominion. Some of this material I am releasing in the lessons of the keepers of the flame fraternity, some in the weekly pearls of wisdom written by the masters of our brotherhood, and some I shall bring to you individually in answer to your heart's calls. But call you must, if this cause, which is just, shall be fulfilled in you. Call unto me, and I will answer thee, declares the Most High God. The Father shall reward you openly for each prayerful call you make in secret. Within the inner recesses of your heart, unknown by any man, you may ever silently call. There in your heart is the crucible of the eternal essence, the white stone, the elixir, the full potency of life. Alchemists of the sacred fire, here is the sacred cosmic formula. Theos equals God, rule, law. You equals being. Theos plus rule plus you equals God's law, active, as principle within your being. Try. I am in constant attunement with your true being. Pax vobiscum. Sanctus Germanus. Please repeat with me the pearl call. And in the purple bit, you put Master Saint Germain, since that's the master that we are working with the information from tonight. In the name of beloved Lord Maitreya, Almoira, and Guru Ma, I ask and command my I Am Presence and beloved Master Saint Germain to lower into my heart center your momentum of light and the energy of the dictation I have just read in order to transmute a corresponding portion of my human consciousness and human creation. Absorb my human consciousness and return it to me requalified and purified. Pass the flame of your higher consciousness through the density and debris of my lower consciousness. Take in the energy of my microscopic consciousness to your heart's altar. Consume and transmute it and return to me the purified substance, the original innocence that is my higher consciousness. Namaste. Thank you. Wow.
That was pretty intense and complete.
No doubt. That's amazing that I am going into court tomorrow and we read this tonight.
Yes.
Wow. There's so much.
Remember, God rule and you. So that's a try.
Well, exactly. And the interesting thing is that he actually says about my person and our power's not in our person. And I'm actually using that argument in the notices. I have already used it. I did not consent to being considered a person when I am a woman. A person is a role that you take on that comes with limitations and liabilities, whereas a woman, with all rights reserved, is under God in the hierarchy of creation. Whereas a person is the legal fiction that's created under the public sphere of the corporations and the government that ultimately then make us under their jurisdiction. But as a man or a woman, we're above that and they can't access that. So they try to get us to stoop down to their level. But as a woman or a man that knows where we stand and whose we stand with, and all that's there with us, we then are the ones that can truly understand how sacred the word is, to use that as the sword that sets us free. And there's a cricket. That's honestly, the cricket has a lot of symbolic significance, but I definitely am not interested in having a cricket in my house. Or it's not my house, it's my papa's house. But like, we definitely are not wanting to have crickets. So I'm actually going to let it out the window. I'm going to just get myself up there and say that every day is a fresh start. Oh, no, this one's, we're going to have to go over. I'm going to just bring you guys with me and we're going to let the cricket out the window. Thank you. And no, thank you. So the reason that that was significant is because I had looked up animal symbolism previously, and the cricket is around abundance. And I can't remember specifically, but it was significant enough that I wanted to point out the fact that I was distracted by the cricket in that moment. And there's no coincidence or accident that that happened. Or you could think that everything's a coincidence and an accident and that nothing is spectacular and miraculous. But that's really the choice that we have. Is like, we can choose to play the victim, or we can choose to realize that we are the conscious and sometimes unconscious co-creators of our own experience. And so whenever we find those denied aspects of ourselves that we're called to recollect, we have to understand there's a discomfort that comes when we bring an unfamiliar one into our space, even if it used to be an aspect of us, always was, except for we pushed out here, and then it becomes like the toxic barrel that emerges and then creates a big splash and leaves a whole bunch of muck and toxins and poisons and stuff that you don't want anything to do with, because all of those emotions were meant to be in movement but got stagnated, and then that stagnation has just emerged into your active life where you are alive, which is evil spelt backwards with a little bit of A for attitude, which is how we must choose to use that which we are given, to choose to just see the good instead of the bad. And then also even know that you can focus on what is good or what is bad or what is great. Like we choose. Like there's spectrums. That's not the right way, because good and great are creative spectrums, and then bad and evil are on the other way. But that would make then great be the opposite of evil. And is that true?
Well, I cannot say yes or no, but it's true that what you said is that we always have the choice to see that what is happening now can be for the greater good.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that happened is not necessarily wrong or right, but we can just say, okay, this has happened, I'm conscious, and it's certainly if it's something that seems wrong, it's because it's being hurting us or whatever it caused. But everything that happened can be for a greater good. If we want that, this is the choice we have to make and call it for that. I want this thing to be under God control. Whatever I don't like it right now, I still say that this thing is happening by God's will, God's control, and I'm willing to go for this God's willing and the greater good that can turn around. And I have, it's not the time for give a lot of explanation or example of that, but I know that we have the choice to say this is for the best.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't look like that. Mm-hmm. We don't want to just accept that, oh, that's terrible, and I'm just going to fall down for that. Mm-hmm. We can say, no, this is for a greater good. I don't see it now, but I know this is what I'm choosing to go for, whatever the situation.
I love it. And while you were talking about that Carrie Underwood song, Jesus Take the Wheel, comes to mind. And then yesterday I saw a meme on Facebook that really made me laugh, where it was one of those little boards with the letters that you can put in, the little white letters on the blackboard. And it said, Jesus take the wheel. Wait, the way this thing's going, we need to pull the car over and then slap some sense into people, which isn't to say that slapping sense into anyone is the correct approach to it, but it made me laugh. And as you were talking about it, it's just like, the way this is going, like, we need to pull the whole car over and have a serious conversation about what each of us are willing to do as the masters on the field that are not yet at the level of mastery, and therefore need to commit to the practice that will actually take us to the level of being able to perform in the moment when we're called on, because we're all being called right now.
Yes. We are all called to make the rightful choice and to see that everything can be under God control into our life. Whatever it doesn't look like that, we can say, we can call for what is the greater good of a situation.
Amen. And that is the final note for this evening. Sometimes on, we do actually, it's because we're energetically making space. So I share that because it is getting late, but there's also a reason that I wasn't yawning at any other point other than till now, when more ideas were being shared that space needed to be made for. So nothing's a miracle. Everything's a miracle. You choose. It's been an absolute pleasure to be with you tonight. Thank you, Francoise, for
thank you so much. Thank you
for this experience. Right. And we'll see you again next week.
Yes.
Have fun, guys.
Okay.
Ladies, gents. Peace.